The wind on 7 could kill a human in 3 minutes. Knew this because the safety briefing had repeated it 5 times before she stepped off the transport ship. 3 minutes. That was all the time the cold needed to freeze the blood in her veins and stop her heart forever. She pulled her thermal suit and watched the white landscape stretch out before her. Ice. Nothing but ice in every direction. The planet was beautiful in the way that death was beautiful, cold, silent, and completely without mercy. "You sure about this assignment?" asked, stepping up beside her. He was the expedition's engineer, a practical man with tired eyes and hands that were always fixing something. "They don't exactly like visitors." "They agreed to let us observe them," replied. "That's enough for now." Shook his head. "They agreed because we offered medicine their healers can't make. That's not the same as wanting us here." He was right, of course. They had made their feelings very clear. Humans were allowed to watch from a distance. Humans were allowed to stay in their metal shelters on the edge of territory. But humans were not welcome in the dens, not welcome at the hunts, and certainly not welcome to speak unless spoken to first. Understood. Her whole job was understanding species that were nothing like her own, and that were very, very different from humans. She saw her first on the 3rd day. He came out of the ice fog like a ghost, 7 feet tall, covered in silver-white fur that moved like silk in the wind. His eyes were pale gold, and they fixed on with an intelligence that made her breath catch. He walked on 2 legs like a human, but everything else about him was wolf. The long muzzle, the pointed ears, the claws that clicked against the ice with each step. Did not move. She had read every report about She knew that sudden movements meant challenge. She knew that direct eye contact meant aggression, so she kept her eyes low and her body still, waiting. They circled her once, twice. He was smelling her, she realized, learning her scent. Then he spoke. "Bearskin." His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. The translator in his ear converted the language into words she could understand, but the tone needed no translation. It was not a greeting. It was a label, a dismissal. "Yes," said quietly, "I am Bearskin, I am also." The ears twitched. For a long moment he simply stared at her. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the fog as silently as he had come. That night wrote in her research journal, "First contact with Scout. Species appears to view humans as physically inferior. Term bearskin suggests they define worth through physical traits, fur, claws, fangs. Humans have none of these. We are, in their eyes, incomplete." Over the following weeks, learned more about She learned that they lived in packs of 20 to 40 members, led by the strongest and among them. She learned that they carved their dens into the glacier itself, creating homes from the very ice that would kill a human in 3 minutes. She learned that they hunted in groups, bringing down prey twice their size through teamwork and patience. And she learned about their leader. He was old for nearly 60 years, and his fur had faded from silver to ash gray. A long scar ran down the left side of his face, crossing his eye and ending at his jaw. That eye was blind now, milky white, but his other eye saw everything. Tolerated the humans. He did not like them. He made this clear in 100 small ways, the way he never acknowledged greetings, the way he positioned himself between her and the pack's inner dens, the way he watched her with that single golden eye as if waiting for her to make a mistake. But he did not send her away. The medicine the humans brought was too valuable. Cubs were dying from a lung sickness that their healers could not cure. Human antibiotics could save them. So accepted the trade, even if he did not accept the traders. Focused on the cubs. There were 11 of them in the pack, ranging from infants still nursing at their mother's sides to young adolescents learning to hunt. They were curious in the way that all children were curious, full of questions, full of wonder, full of the belief that the universe was an interesting place waiting to be explored. At first the cubs watched from a distance. They would peek out from behind their mother's legs, golden eyes wide with fascination. A human, a real bare skin. They had heard stories, but they had never seen one before. Began leaving small gifts near the edge of the den territory. Heat packs that stayed warm for hours, dried fruit from the human supplies, small toys made of bright plastic that caught the light in interesting ways. The cubs found the gifts, the cubs took the gifts, and slowly, very slowly, the cubs began to approach. Was the bravest. She was barely 4 years old, small and white as fresh snow, with a black patch over one ear. She would creep close to, sniff her boots, then run away giggling, a strange chittering sound that made smile every time. Came next. He was brother, slightly bigger, slightly bolder. He liked the dried fruit best. He would take it from his hand if she held very, very still. Little Gray was the youngest. He was not related to the other two, but he followed them everywhere, a small shadow with enormous ears and paws too big for his body. He was shy. He never came close enough to touch, but he watched with an expression she could only describe as longing. Their mother was a young female with pale gray fur and eyes like amber. She did not trust. She made this clear by positioning herself between her cubs and the human whenever possible, but she did not stop the cubs from approaching. Perhaps she saw no harm in it. Perhaps she was simply tired of fighting their curiosity. Did not push. She let the relationships grow at their own pace. She documented everything in her journal, careful and precise, the way a scientist should. But sometimes, late at night, she admitted something to herself. She was not just studying the cubs anymore. She was growing fond of them. On the 42nd day, called from the weather station. "We have a problem," she said. Her voice was tight with worry. "A big one." Looked out at the endless ice, and for the first time, she noticed that the glacier beneath her feet was trembling. Hands were shaking when reached the weather station. The screens on the wall showed swirling patterns of blue and white, and none of them looked good. "Tell me," said. "There's a storm coming," pointed at the largest screen. "Not just any storm. This is what we call a cascade event. The temperature is going to drop 40 degrees in 6 hours. The pressure changes will destabilize the upper glacier. We're looking at ice collapses across the entire region." Felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. How bad? Bad enough that I've already called for evacuation. Turned to face her. Transport ships are coming, but they won't be here for 3 days. The storm hits in 2. What about the... Hesitated. That hesitation told everything she needed to know. "We can't evacuate them," said finally. "We don't have room on the transports. We don't have time to explain the danger, and even if we did..." "They wouldn't leave," finished. "Their dens are their home. They've survived in those caves for generations." "Exactly," looked tired. "I'm sorry, I know you've been working with them, but we have to focus on our own people first." Understood the logic. She even agreed with it in a cold and practical way. Humans first. That was the rule when resources were limited. You saved who you could save, and you lived with the guilt of those you couldn't. But she kept thinking about his chittering laugh, about taking fruit from her hand, about little Gray watching her with those enormous, hopeful eyes. "I have to warn them," she said. "I'm not asking permission," was already moving toward the door. "I'm going to try, that's all, just try." Caught up with her halfway to the settlement. He was carrying an extra thermal pack and a look of deep concern. "You're going to get yourself killed," he said. Maybe, kept walking, "but I have to try." The "don't trust us," barely tolerates us. You think he's going to listen to warnings about weather patterns and glacier stability. These are aliens who hunt with their bare claws. They're not going to understand our science. Then I'll find another way to explain. Grabbed her arm, forcing her to stop. "Listen to me. You're a good scientist, you're a good person, but you can't save everyone. Sometimes you have to accept that." Looked at him for a long moment. She thought about all the times she had accepted things, all the times she had been practical and careful and safe, all the times she had watched from a distance because that was what the rules required. "Not this time," she said quietly. "Not these cubs." She pulled free and continued walking. After a moment, she heard footsteps following behind her. Met them at the border of territory. His single golden eye swept over them with the same cold assessment it always did. "Bearskins," he said, "why do you come?" Chose her words carefully. "Danger is coming. The ice above your dens is going to break. Many will die if they stay inside." His ears flattened. "The ice has held for 100 generations. It will hold for 100 more." "Not this time. A great storm is coming. The kind that," struggled to find words he would understand. "The kind that shakes the world. The ice will fall. Your cubs, your elders, anyone in the deep caves, they will be buried." For a long moment said nothing. Then he made a sound that's translator couldn't process, something between a growl and a laugh. "You bearskins fear everything," he said. "The cold, the ice, the dark. You wrap yourselves in false fur and hide in metal boxes. And now you come to tell us who have lived on this ice since before your species learned to walk upright, that we should fear the weather. I'm not asking you to fear it. I'm asking you to prepare for it. We do not need your preparation. We do not need your warnings. We do not need you." Turned and walked away. The conversation was over. Stood in the cold, watching him go, put a hand on her shoulder. "You tried," he said. "That's more than most would do." But wasn't thinking about any more. She was thinking about the nursery den. She had seen it once from a distance, a warm hollow deep in the glacier where the pack's youngest cubs were kept safe during storms. Safe from the cold, safe from predators. Not safe from falling ice. "I need to check on the cubs," she said. Frowned. "The pack just told us to leave." "Told us?" The mothers didn't, was already moving. "Lets me near her cubs, she might listen even if won't." The nursery den was located in a side tunnel, away from the main pack chambers. It was warmer there, heated by thermal vents that rose from somewhere deep beneath the glacier. Had visited 3 times before, always with silent permission. But when she arrived, wasn't there. The hunting party, of course. When storms approached, the hunted to stock up on food, was one of the pack's best hunters. She would be out on the ice with the others, leaving her cubs in the safety of the den. Except the den wasn't safe, not anymore. Heard the cubs before she saw them. High voice chattering about something, deeper answers, little Gray's soft sounds of agreement. They were playing in the nursery, unaware that the world above them was about to fall. Stepped into the chamber. The cubs looked up and their faces lit with recognition. Bounded toward her. "You came. Did you bring more of the sweet dried things?" "Not today." Knelt down to their level. "I need you to listen to me, all of you. Something bad is going to happen and—" The ground shook. It was just a tremor, small and quick, but the cubs felt it. Their ears went flat against their heads. Little Gray whimpered and pressed against his leg. "What was that?" asked. His voice was trying to be brave but could hear the fear underneath. Another tremor, stronger this time. Looked up at the ceiling of the nursery den. It was solid ice, thick and ancient, carved by claws over generations. It had stood for centuries. A crack appeared. Small at first, just a thin line running across the frozen surface, but as watched it spread, branching, growing, reaching. "We need to move," she said. "Now all of you follow me." The crack split open, and the ice began to fall. Time slowed down. That was what would remember later, how everything seemed to happen in slow motion, each second stretching into an hour. The first piece of ice fell from the ceiling. It was small, no bigger than her fist, and it shattered against the ground with a sound like breaking glass. The cubs screamed. Little Gray tried to run, but his paws slipped on the frozen floor and he fell, crying out in fear. More cracks appeared above them. The whole ceiling was coming apart now, chunks of ancient glacier breaking free and falling like frozen rain. A piece the size of a table crashed down 3 feet from where stood, sending splinters of ice in every direction. There was no time to reach the tunnel, no time to lead the cubs to safety, no time for anything except one single, desperate choice. Threw herself forward. She grabbed Little Gray with one arm and pulled him close. Was next, caught her by the scruff and yanked her in. Was the farthest away, frozen in terror, and had to lunge for him, her fingers closing around his small wrist just as a massive slab of ice crashed down where he had been standing. She pulled all 3 cubs beneath her body. And then she curled around them like a shell. The ice fell. The first piece hit her shoulder. She felt the impact like a hammer blow, felt something crack inside her that shouldn't crack. Pain exploded through her arm, white-hot and blinding, but she didn't move. She couldn't move. The cubs were beneath her. If she moved, they would die. More ice. A chunk struck her back, right between her shoulder blades. She heard herself scream, a sound she didn't recognize as her own voice. The cold was inside her now, ice and blood mixing together as her thermal suit tore open. Little Gray was crying. She could feel his small body shaking against her chest, could hear his terrified whimpers. She pressed her face close to his ear. "It's okay," she whispered. I've got you, I've got you." Another impact. Her left arm, the one wrapped around, went numb. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore. Couldn't feel anything except pain and cold and the desperate need to stay still, stay covered, stay between the ice and the children. Was praying. His voice was high and thin, calling out for his mother, for anyone who could help. Wished she could comfort him too, but she couldn't move her head. She couldn't move anything anymore. The ceiling kept falling. How long did it last? Would never know for certain. Later told her it was 47 seconds from the first crack to the final collapse. 47 seconds, less than a minute. It felt like a lifetime. When the last piece of ice finally settled, tried to move, she couldn't. Her body was buried under debris, trapped in a coffin of frozen water. But her arms, her broken, bleeding, frozen arms, were still wrapped around 3 small bodies. And those bodies were still warm, still breathing, still alive. She said, her voice was barely a whisper, "Little Gray, are you hurt?" No's voice was thick with tears. "We're okay, we're okay." Good, closed her eyes. That's good. The cold was spreading through her now, moving up from her torn back into her chest. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, could feel her thoughts growing fuzzy around the edges. This was what freezing felt like, she realized. It wasn't painful anymore. It was almost peaceful. Something warm touched her face. A tongue. Little Gray was licking her cheek, the way a cub would comfort a. "Don't sleep," he said. His voice was high with fear. "Don't sleep, you have to stay awake." "I'm trying." But her eyes were so heavy, so very heavy. "Help's" voice rang out, echoing through the ruined chamber. "Someone help US. The bearskin is hurt, please." Wanted to tell her to be quiet, to save her strength, but she couldn't form the words. The darkness was coming now, closing in from the edges of her vision. She thought about her parents back on Earth, about the garden her mother had always wanted her to see. She thought about, and in the research station that had become her home. She thought about the cubs pressed against her chest, warm and alive because she had chosen to put herself between them and death. It was a good choice, she decided. If she had to die, this was a good way to do it. His voice was far away now, like it was coming from the end of a long tunnel. "Please wake up." She couldn't answer. The darkness took her. The hunting party heard the collapse from half a mile away. They heard screams even farther. Was the first to reach the nursery, running so fast that the ice blurred beneath her paws. What she found made her stop dead. The nursery was destroyed. The ceiling had caved in completely, filling the chamber with broken ice and shattered stone. In the middle of the destruction was a shape she didn't recognize, something covered in blood and debris, something that looked like it had been crushed by the falling glacier. Then she saw the fur, 3 small heads poking out from beneath the shape, 3 small faces streaked with tears but unharmed. Her cubs were alive. And the shape protecting them was the bare skin, the human. Mother squirmed free of his broken arm and ran too. Mother, she saved us. The ice was falling and she covered us. She wouldn't move even when the big pieces hit her. Stared at the human's body. She could see the wounds now, the deep gashes in her back, the blood staining the snow, the strange angle of her left arm. She could see the way his lips had turned blue, the way her chest barely moved with each shallow breath. This creature had no claws, no fangs, no fur to protect her from the cold. She was weak, fragile, everything about bare skins. And she had used that fragile body as a shield for cubs that were not her own. Get the healers, said quietly. Get the bearskins too, all of them. Appeared at the edge of the destruction. His single eye took in the scene, the ruined nursery, the weeping cubs, the broken human. What happened here? He asked. Looked at him. She saved them, she said. The bearskin saved our children. For the first time since had known him, had no words, dreamed of warmth. She dreamed of summer on earth, of sunlight on her skin, of the smell of flowers in her mother's garden. She dreamed of laughter and music and the feeling of soft grass beneath her bare feet. It was a beautiful dream, and she didn't want to wake up. But voices kept pulling at her. Voices speaking in languages she couldn't understand, calling her name, begging her to come back. When she finally opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was fur. Silver fur, soft as silk, pressed close to her face. For a moment thought she was still dreaming. Then the fur moved and little Gray's worried eyes appeared. She's awake, he shouted. Mother, the bearskin is awake. Pain followed consciousness. Gasped as her body remembered what had happened to it, the crushing weight of the ice, the breaking of bones, the tearing of flesh. Everything hurt, everything. Easy, a hand touched her shoulder, a human hand. His voice, don't try to move, you've been out for 3 days. 3 days, his voice was barely a whisper. You almost died. His face appeared above her and she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the worry, the relief. Your body temperature dropped to 82 degrees. Your heart stopped twice. The medics didn't think you'd make it. But she did. Another voice, deep and rough and unfamiliar, turned her head, ignoring the pain that shot through her neck, and saw as she had never met before. He was old, older even than, with patches of fur missing from his face and herbs braided into his mane. This is, said, he's the pack's healer. He's been working with our medics to treat your wounds. Made a sound that might have been a grunt of acknowledgement. Bearskin medicine is strange, he said, but useful. Your doctors know many things about blood and bone. They helped keep you alive while I worked to heal your spirit. Didn't understand what that meant, but she was too tired to ask. She closed her eyes again, letting the darkness pull at her. Rest, said. Your body needs time, but know this, you will live. The ice took much from you, but it did not take your life. She slept again. This time there were no dreams. Over the following days, slowly healed. The human medics did what they could for her bones and her blood, did what he could for her pain and her fever. Between them, they pulled her back from the edge of death, one small step at a time. But it was the cubs who truly helped her recover. They came to see her every day, brought stories, chattering about the hunt and the weather and the games she had played with her brothers, brought food, bits of dried meat that he insisted were the best parts of the kill. Little Gray brought nothing except himself, curling up beside bed and refusing to leave. He blames himself, explained one evening. She had come to check on her cubs and stayed to watch over. He thinks that if he had run faster, you wouldn't have needed to catch him. He doesn't understand that you would have protected them anyway. Looked at little Gray, small and gray and sad, pressed against her side. Tell him it wasn't his fault. Tell him I would do it again. Was quiet for a moment. He knows, she said finally, We all know. On the fifth day was strong enough to stand. The medics helped her up, supporting her weight as she found her balance. Her left arm was wrapped in a cast. Her back was covered in bandages. Every step sent pain shooting through her body. But she could walk, she could live, that was enough. The pack was waiting for her. Didn't know it until she stepped out of the healing den. She had expected an empty tunnel, maybe a few curious cubs. Instead, she found every in the settlement lined up along the walls, their golden eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Stood at the front. His single eye watched her approach, and for once there was no coldness in his expression, no dismissal. Something else had taken its place, something couldn't quite name. "The pack wishes to see," said quietly. "They wish to see what you carry." "What I carry?" "Your marks," gestured to her back. "The ice left its memory on your skin. The pack needs to witness." Understood. Slowly, carefully, she turned around, helped her lower the back of her medical gown, exposing the bandages beneath. Removed them one by one. Couldn't see her own back. She didn't need to. She could feel what was there, the thick ridges of scar tissue, the rough patches where skin had been torn away and rebuilt. The wounds had closed, but they would never fully heal. She would carry those marks for the rest of her life. The pack was silent, then stepped forward. He moved slowly, his old body showing its age, until he stood directly behind. She felt his breath on her skin. "These marks," he said, and his voice carried through the tunnel so that every could hear, "were earned protecting the young. These marks were carved by ice that should have killed cubs of this pack. These marks are the marks of a guardian." Didn't move, she barely breathed. Lowered his head. It was a deep bow, his muzzle nearly touching the ground, his blind eye closed in respect. One by one, the rest of the pack did the same. The hunters and the elders and the mothers with cubs pressed against their legs. Every in the settlement bowed their heads to the small, broken human standing in their midst. Felt tears on her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. When raised his head again, his expression had changed. The coldness was gone entirely now, replaced by something warm, something like pride. "You came to us as a bare skin," he said. "A stranger, an outsider. You had no claws to fight with, no fur to protect you, no fangs to defend yourself. We thought this made you weak." He stepped forward and pressed his forehead to his hand, the same gesture had used days ago, a gesture of profound debt, of recognition, of family. "We were wrong," said. "You are bearskin no longer. From this day forward you are pack." The cubs were the first to break the silence. Little Gray howled, a high, joyful sound that echoed off the ice walls, and joined in, and then the adults, until the entire settlement was filled with the voices of the pack raised in celebration. Stood in the middle of it all, crying and laughing at the same time, surrounded by the family she had nearly died to protect. She was packed now. She was home 6 months past on 7, the ice healed, the settlement was rebuilt, and everything changed. Walked through the dens with ease now, her thermal suit replaced by a cloak of woven fur that the pack mothers had made for her. It was heavy and warm and smelled like home. The cubs had helped with the weaving, their small claws adding uneven stitches that treasured more than any perfect pattern. Little Gray came bounding around a corner, his paws too big for his body, his ears flopping as he ran. He had grown in the past months, they all had, but he was still the smallest of the three, still her shadow, still the cub who refused to let her out of his sight. "Good morning, little one," knelt to greet him, and he pressed his forehead to her hand the way his elders did, the gesture that meant family, the gesture that meant pack. "Is looking for you," Little Gray said. "The Sky People are here again." The Sky People. That was what the cubs called the visitors from the Galactic Council, representatives from a dozen different alien species who had come to 7 to see the impossible for themselves. A human living with a bare skin accepted as pack. The story had spread. It had started as a whisper, passed between traders and explorers who stopped at the settlement. Then it had grown into a rumor, shared across space stations and colony worlds. By the time 6 months had passed, it had become a legend. The bare skin who shielded the cubs from falling ice. The pack who lowered their heads when they saw her marks. Now everyone wanted to see. Everyone wanted to understand. Found in the main chamber, standing before a group of aliens who looked nothing alike. There was a tall, thin creature covered in iridescent scales. A short, round being with 6 arms and compound eyes. A floating entity that seemed to be made entirely of light. All of them were staring at as she approached. "This is her," the scaled creature asked. Its voice was high and reedy. "This is the human the accepted." "I am," said. She had learned to speak for herself in situations like this. The pack respected those who spoke their own truth. "Remarkable," the creature circled her, studying her like a specimen. "You are so small, so fragile. How did you survive the ice collapse?" "I almost didn't. But you chose to protect the young ones anyway, knowing you might die." Thought about that moment, the falling ice, the screaming cubs, the choice that hadn't felt like a choice at all. "I didn't think about dying," she said. "I only thought about them." The floating entity pulsed with light. "We have studied many species across the galaxy. They are known for their strength and their loyalty to pack. They do not accept outsiders easily. They have never accepted a member of another species." "Until now," said, his voice was deep with pride. "Until her." "Why?" the round, 6-armed being leaned forward. "What makes this human different from others? What made you accept her when you have rejected so many?" Stepped forward. She had been standing in the shadows, watching, waiting for someone to ask the right question. Now she moved to side, her cubs trailing behind her, and nearly grown now and little gray, still small, still faithful. She did not calculate, said. When the ice fell, she did not stop to measure the danger against the cost. She did not weigh her life against the lives of my children. She simply shielded. The aliens exchanged looks. The concept seemed foreign to them. "All species have survival instincts," the scaled creature said. "To override those instincts for the young of another species, it defies biological programming." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You do not understand humans," he said. "We did not either at first. We looked at them and saw bare skin. We saw creatures without claws, without fangs, without fur to protect them from the cold. We thought they were weak." He moved to stand beside, his old body showing its age but his single eye still sharp. "We were wrong. The humans are not weak, they are soft. And they choose to place that softness between danger and those who cannot protect themselves. This is not weakness. This is the greatest strength of all." The words hung in the air. The aliens were silent, processing. Little Gray pressed against leg, moved to her other side, stood behind her, his now adult body forming a wall of protection at her back. They surrounded her the way pack surrounded pack, the way family protected family. "Tell your councils," continued. "Tell your worlds. Tell every species that wonders why they bow their heads to a bare skin. Tell them this: the humans have no weapons built into their bodies, no armor, no natural defenses, but they have something else. They have the will to stand between the helpless and harm, even when it costs them everything, even when it leaves marks that will never heal." He looked at the scars hidden beneath her cloak, at the woman who had become legend. "That is why she is pack. That is why she is family. That is why they will stand beside the humans until the stars go dark." The visitors left that evening, carrying the story with them. Watched their ships rise into the sky, bright points of light that faded into the darkness between stars. "Do you think they understood?" she asked. Stood beside her, arms crossed against the cold. He had stayed too, the only other human still on 7. He said he wasn't going to leave her alone, but suspected he had found his own place among the pack. His engineering skills had saved the settlement more than once during the rebuilding. I don't know, he admitted, but they'll tell the story, and eventually someone will understand. Is that why you stayed, to see if the story mattered? Shook his head. I stayed because you taught me something. What? That sometimes the most important thing you can do is just be there, he smiled. You didn't shield those cubs because you were a scientist or a diplomat or a hero. You did it because you were there and they needed someone, and you decided it was going to be you. Thought about that. She thought about all the moments in her life when she had been there, when she could have chosen to step forward to help, to protect. Some of those moments she had taken, others she had let pass by. I got lucky, she said. If I had been a few seconds slower, a few feet farther away. But you weren't. Put a hand on her shoulder. You were exactly where you needed to be, and you did exactly what you needed to do. The pack's fire was burning in the main chamber. Could see the warm glow from here. Could hear the voices of and cubs and the one human engineer who had become as much a part of this family as she had. Little Gray appeared at her side. He was getting faster now, almost as quick as his adopted siblings. Are you coming? He asked. Is telling stories tonight. He says he will tell the story of the bearskin who became Pack. Smiled. I've heard that one before. But this time I get to add the parts you forgot to tell. Little Gray's eyes sparkled with mischief. Like how you sang to us when the ice was falling. Says you don't remember, but I do. You sang a song I didn't understand, but it made me feel safe. Didn't remember singing. The memory was lost somewhere in the pain and the cold and the desperate need to keep 3 small bodies protected beneath her own. But Little Gray remembered. That was enough. All right, she said, let's go hear the story. She walked back into the settlement, into the warmth and the light and the family that had accepted her as their own. Little Gray trotted beside her, followed behind. And somewhere out among the stars, the story was spreading. The story of a bearskin who had earned her marks, and a pack who had learned the true meaning of strength. The story of how a human had taught the galaxy what it meant to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The story of who was Pack,